Hi, and welcome to Tales from the Gulag. And my thought for today is the guy who should be Time's Man of the Year. Time magazine has announced their person for the year, and it's this baby. So sweet, so fresh-faced, and isn't she good-looking? And yes, it's Greta Thunberg. The Frunzos Award, just a little thing that I've tried to do annually, and I'm sorry I missed the 2019 Frunzos. Hopefully I'll manage to get something for 2020. But anyway, the Frunzos is seriously considering Greta as the International Idiot of the Year, but we'll see where this one goes. Now, many see the recognition of time as being an honour. And in fact, Greta herself has acknowledged it as an honour. She has said that being recognised as Person of the Year, oh wow, what a great honour, she says. Well, actually, no. It is in fact as a recognition that for good or for ill, this person, or it could be a group of people, whatever, has been most influential in making headlines during the year. If it were some kind of honour or endorsement, then we'll have a think about this one, because this guy, I'll show you, can you see it? This guy was Time magazine's Person of the Year for 1938. Yes, it is Adolf Hitler. Or a twice recipient as Person of the Year in 1939 and 1942 is this guy here, Joseph Stalin, a gangster and bank robber who turned socialist revolutionary. He was an unconvicted war criminal, a genocidist, generally nasty person. And he made that 1938 recipient look like an absolute sweetheart. Of course, not all recipients of Time magazine's Person of the Year were bad people. There was Pope John Paul II. Now, he was a great guy who was actually instrumental in toppling the power of the Soviet Union, along with Ronald Reagan, another recipient of the Person of the Year. Or there is Corazon Aquino, the wife of a Philippines senator who helped overthrow the dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines by the People Power movement. So this is all a pretty mixed bag when it comes to Time magazine's Person of the Year. So it is not an honour, it's not an endorsement, or at least I hope not, but it simply acknowledges this person's role as an influencer, as a maker of headlines. Well, there is the guy that I think should have been the Man of the Year, and that is Joshua Wong of Hong Kong. I was rather inspired by watching a documentary about him on Netflix, and I encourage you, if you subscribe to Netflix, to have a look at the documentary called Joshua. It's worth a look. Well, the actual recipient, Greta Thunberg, certainly did make headlines as a young climate change activist. Now, I'm not going to criticise Greta for her relatively privileged background, and the allegations of mental illness, well, at best I'm an amateur psychologist. I've studied a bit, but I'm not really qualified, and I'm going to reserve judgment on that one. But that said, that she couldn't sleep for a while because of her fear that the world was going to end because of climate change, because she couldn't eat for the same reason, now an eating disorder. Altogether, it raises alarm bells, doesn't it? Including, maybe, possible child abuse by her parents and others for pumping her so full of this climate change propaganda as a youngster that it had such a traumatic effect on her. And critics have actually been rightfully kind to her because, well, she is young and what does she really know? And I actually agree. But at what age does she become old enough to have to handle the rough and tumble of being an activist on the world stage? If she's not there yet, I would suggest that she's pretty close to it, because she would be close to being an adult, close to being a voting age with all the privileges and responsibilities that involves. Now, here are some of my criticisms of Greta Thunberg, and the first two come from her speech to the United Nations earlier in the year. Now, number one, she says to the United Nations, "This is not right. I should be at school," she says. And I actually agree with her on this one. But with a caveat that if the education system helped contribute to her eating and sleeping disorder, she is probably better off out of school. In that case, maybe some homeschooling or just spending time in libraries, educating herself, might help her to get educated in real facts that might help her to actually make a real difference if climate change and global warming and all that stuff is of real concern to her. Number two, she says, "How dare you? How dare you call the youth a hope for the future when you are robbing us of your future with your empty words and promises?" Now, this comment reminds me of the conversations that are so common between parents and young teenagers. You say no to them for whatever reason it may be, and it's, "Oh, you hate me, you are ruining my life." How often have I had that from my children when they were teenagers? Greta sounds just like that. And my third criticism is this: I would really have to call it a stunt of sailing to America. Well, great. But she's still the beneficiary of the modern fossil fuel-based economy. Was there a diesel engine on board her boat? What about the crew that flew across the Atlantic to sail the boat back to Europe? Far from robbing her of her future, it is those previous generations that have given her the opportunity to build a better future for herself. Dig into the rhetoric, even Greta's own rhetoric, and you'll find that it is just Marxism at work here, because she also blames things like the capitalist system and the corporations and the pursuit of wealth and money and that kind of thing. It turns out that it is a philosophy that is driving all this stuff and is driving her, which, when implemented, will in fact rob her of a future. Number four, she is a great manipulator, helped by her youth and her lovely innocent looks. This is why the media love her. And this is exactly why the left are quite happily using her for her own terrible ends. But listen to what she actually says. She doesn't present any arguments. It is just pure emotional blackmail. But then number 5, criticism number 5. Her activism has certainly put her into the world spotlight, but it in fact costs her nothing, and in fact it turns out to be a pretty good gig. I don't know how much she actually earns from her supporters, but it seems that she does have her minders and protectors around her. And I do know for sure that she got a Tesla of her own from them. Well, try flipping burgers at McDonald's and see if you do as well from that. And even more to the point, she gets to talk to the powerful elites who will shower her with praise while declaring her as a great, brave warrior, even getting to be Time magazine's Person of the Year. And who knows, maybe is there going to be a Nobel Peace Prize for her? It's apparently not so hard to get a Nobel Peace Prize these days, if even Barack Obama managed to get one just for getting elected as president. So let's look at my alternative nomination for Person of the Year. Joshua Wong. I should have got a picture of him to hold up to the camera, but anyway, Joshua Wong, a young man from Hong Kong who became an activist at the age of 14 because Beijing wanted to bring a so-called national curriculum into Hong Kong schools because it was designed to make students into good communists, and Joshua didn't want to be a communist. He didn't want communist indoctrination. Instead, he actually wanted an education. And so Joshua took to the streets. It took a fair while, but after a while he also got to influence a lot of people, and eventually with others. His scholarism movement grew into the umbrella movement a few years ago, and now in 2019 his movement has attracted literally millions of Hong Kongers to take to the streets to demand human rights and to protest for 6 months, even more now, and it's still counting. Joshua Wong has had some protection now because of his international fame, which makes it a bit harder to touch him, but still, Beijing and the Chinese Communist Party would no doubt love to get rid of him and somehow make a public example of him. He and his followers there face tear gas and rubber bullets, something which I bet Greta Thunberg never experienced. They face police brutality, arrest, long-term imprisonment. Does Joshua get to go to school? Well, I actually doubt it. It seems to me that he does try to read and keep up and get as much as an education as he can, but I'd say basically no. Joshua Wong is not in the limelight as much as Greta. He's not such a darling of the media, but he certainly has influenced many millions of people, certainly in Hong Kong, but then also internationally at great personal cost. If he gets to address the United Nations, I bet you my bottom dollar that not everybody there will be happy to applaud him. His activism is to push for the rights that the likes of Greta Thunberg and those idiots of Extinction Rebellion enjoy and want to use against us. Joshua Wong's activism is genuinely for good, not just for himself, but also for his fellow citizens. Joshua Wong is the one that I would like to have seen to be Time magazine's Person of the Year, but then maybe it's just pushing for the wrong ideology.